Hi, everyone. I'm Aric Chen. I'm an independent curator and writer based in Shanghai and also professor at Tongji University and curatorial director for the Design Miami Fairs. And it's really my privilege today to be speaking with Kai-Yin Lo. Now, for many people, Kai-Yin will need no introduction. She is a woman who's really led a remarkable life. She was born and raised in Hong Kong, where she still lives today. But she studied at Cambridge and in London. She moved to New York early on, where she worked with the legendary publishing magnate Henry Luce. There was this famous washroom in Kai-Yin's previous home in Hong Kong that was just plastered with photos of Kai-Yin with, oh, I don't remember. It was like Henry Kissinger and Jackie Onassis or people like that. Um, before coming back to Hong Kong, where she became really an internationally renowned jewelry designer. And since then, also a scholar of traditional Chinese furniture and domestic environments, and an overall cultural patron and ambassador, really working across cultures, geographies, and disciplines. I really got to know Kai-Yin when I was a curator at M+, the Museum for Visual Culture that's opening next year in Hong Kong, where Kai-Yin as a board member was really a very key supporter. Kai-Yin is also a pioneer as a collector in Asia of both 20th century and contemporary design, which is what we're here to talk about today. So maybe Kai-Yin, we can start off by asking you really how you began collecting design.
Well, after that glowing introduction, I better be careful. Thank you. Now, I'm a historian, a medieval European historian, which I studied at Girton College, Cambridge, and then more history at King's College, London University. So my knowledge of Chinese history was secondary school level. So I began to gain better understanding of Chinese history through investigating the Chinese way of living, the home, the family, and the house. And I wrote 3 books about it as I traveled throughout China, mostly in vernacular environment. So I amassed a good collection of Chinese furniture from the 1980s, and the first book, Classical and Vernacular Chinese Furniture in the Living Environment, published in 1998, with pathfinding articles by leading experts, really drew new views and understanding to Chinese way of living. And then the next book, Vernacular Environment in China, focused on regional patterns of the community. Then came House Home Family, Living and Being Chinese, was my inquiry together with Professor Ron Knapp. It was chosen by the Association of Museum Directors USA as one of the 15 important books for understanding China. So after that, I thought I better understand, go back to Europe. That's what I was trained for. So as furniture is the tools of the house, so I studied its construction, function, role, and meaning in the living environment. It so happened that in 2012, I was a member together on a mission to Scandinavia with the Hong Kong Design Center. So it was there that I was open to a new world of furniture. So shall
Okay.
I go on telling you about it?
Well, sure, but were you already collecting classical Chinese furniture at this point?
I collected only mostly Chinese furniture, Chinese
Yeah.
classical Chinese furniture made of the good stuff, the good wood, Huanghua Li, Zitan, Nanbu. And then I went into vernacular furniture made of lower ranking wood, and which most 99% of the people in China used. Mhm. So actually, having understood Chinese furniture, its construction and its background, I thought I better explore another system of furniture. So the Scandinavian trip availed me of my first opportunity.
Yeah, and so what was it about the Scandinavian furniture that really drew you in?
Well, it's like Hans Wegner. When he saw the round back chair, he said, wow, it's a new world. And then I looked the other way. I saw the China chair and I compared it with my round back chair, which is so much more formal, so much bigger in size. So hence the difference already I noticed. Maintenance role was to make the chair comfortable for economics for the body. The Chinese chair did not care about that. It was symbolic. It occupied always the most important space in any room. And, when there's a family meeting, gathering, so the hierarchy, I mean, the higher of the hierarchy of the household would sit on it. So it's a ritual as against something that the body would rest on for comfort.
Right. So you well, and also, the famous story with the Hans Wegner China chair, as it's called now, is that of course Wegner never actually visited China, but he was struck by drawings or images of Ming Dynasty chairs.
He was struck by a photograph of a Danish merchant wearing a Mandarin coat, sitting on a chair that he did not understand. So he arranged to have this chair with a round back shipped to Denmark. And he said, uncomfortable. Let me do my bit. So hence the China chair and evolved other variations of it.
Yeah, yeah, and so I mean, you went on to collect. Your collection is quite broad and eclectic, in a wonderful way. But there are very strong sort of narrative threads that run through it. I mean, you had a strategy with your collection, or even an agenda in some ways. Can you tell us a bit more about that and how that narrative later evolved with your collection?
Thank you. Cross culture is at the bottom of my direction and my taste, really. So from the China chair, of course, you look into Wagner and you see his other chairs and his round back chair and his office chair, particularly with that wide wooden spec, then which requires a big piece of wood. And yet, as he said, in the office, you better work in comfort. And it's a very comfortable office chair. And so from him, I began to look into other people. And the Metropolitan chair has a similar majestic back. Now, let me see. What is the designer's name? And so Bender Matson. The one I have to offer at Philips is Pedigree. This chair has impressive provenance. It was a gift by cabinet maker Willie Beck, whose name is inscribed underneath, as per tradition, to another well-known maker, Peter Wheat, and it remained in his family until 2012. In most of my collection, I care about the provenance because then you know that it's always good to have association. Then you know that the chair has been in good hands.
Yeah. So speaking of provenance, I mean, you definitely knew that this was something that was important to you as a collector in making your decisions, and you knew where to go. But I guess maybe, well, as I said, you are a pioneer as a collector in Asia of this kind of material. What advice would you give to others who might want to start a collection? Where should they be looking?
I was very lucky because I was with the Hong Kong Design Center delegation to Denmark, to Sweden, and to Finland. So I had good association, and I worked with the top galleries. Was very well advised. So I think it's very important to be well advised. But you have to do your homework too, but you can't learn about a new area, a new direction in 1 year or a couple of years, and be prepared to make some mistakes, and then you trade. So I also learn not to be that ambitious. You concentrate in one area. And now to go back, in fact, my first piece was in 2008, purchased at Sotheby's. Even before my trips to Scandinavia, I was already drawn by Alto's story, because how he bent wood. So because Chinese furniture, you care about the wood. And the curly birch, which is indigenous to Finland, and how he used it. And that was really my first piece of collection of European furniture.
Right. So the Alto was your very first piece
Yes.
of outside of the traditional Chinese category.
It really was. It preceded even the Hans Wagner. And from Hans Wagner's China chair, I began a dedicated direction. Mm.
Oh. Yeah. I mean, so you started. Well, you started with mid 20th century Scandinavian furniture, and then you sort of moved on to sort of postmodern and contemporary. I mean, how did your interest sort of evolve into those areas?
My love is still with the postmodern furniture. And how did I move on to contemporary things? Is like the Campana brothers, which I think is very amusing. And it's more than furniture, it's a concoction of things. And so the sushi chair is called. It was purchased at the Phillips auction to raise funds for the Design Museum in London. And so the Nendo chairs, I saw the display in Milan, and I bought them from Fender in New York, and I think it's very amusing. So furniture has really uh, 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 been redirected into a different way, and no more the cabinet maker. So different materials, and so it's quite amusing. Of course, I mean these days, if you look at Laris Yarman, I mean even more high tech, and in no way do I collect that. I look at that and learn about the direction, which I don't want to follow.
Well, but you do collect Zhang Zhoujie, who is, I guess, maybe China's answer to Joris Larman. I mean, he's a very successful designer based in Shanghai who is known for his algorithmically designed furniture. Well, algorithmically designed, digitally designed, but handcrafted, in fact.
Yes, handcrafted. That's the point I like. Digitally designed but handcrafted. It's still with the human manipulation.
Well, it seems like maybe another thread running through your collection is works that kind of show works that deal with a sort of contrast, right? I mean, in some in your interest with mid-century Scandinavian, and also in some of your other work, you're looking at well, not just contrast, but also where binaries interact. Whether it's East and West, let's say, or digital and handcrafted. Do you think that's fair to say?
Yes, as I said, I started with like the other way, like Hans Wagner, looking west, and he looked east. East and west um, comparison, similarity has always been at the foundation of my attention. So then, as we said, I mean, in fact, the world is completely like confluenced into one place. So that really doesn't apply so much. So anyway, so maybe the world is, the handcrafted world has disappeared, and the digitally, you know, um, I mean, calculated world is here, and I have not collected recently, but I think my next purchase might be going back to the um, to the mid 1990s. I decided I still like that period the best.
Yeah. And will tell us a little bit more about what that period's appeal is for you.
That period is like the transition. I see the vestiges of the traditional, the old design, be it of Chinese tradition or Scandinavian tradition, and then it's still made for use. And even though, for example, Hans Wegener's office chair, which is with that wonderful back slab of wood that you feel that don't want to slouch on it because it's valuable, it's good, but it's just, it's got a quality and a distinction about it. And the Metropolitan chair, which is one of my favorite, and you see that magnificent leather constructed back, with this wonderful curve. It's grace, it's quality, and it's design, and it's dignity.
Yeah, well, I mean, going back to this sort of East meets West idea, I should have mentioned that one of the pieces in your collection is the Xiaofan chair, which is a very direct kind of expression. In some ways, to me, it's very iconic of your collection and your way of thinking about your collection. Can you tell us the story behind that chair and how you came across it?
I met Shaofan in the 1990s in Shanghai, and I believe his chair was done in 1997. I've forgotten, and it's number one of 70 carved at the back. So I asked him, I said, "Did you do 70?" He said, "I tried 70." I said, "You don't do that in this world. It's confounding." So I don't know how many he ended up with to his satisfaction, satisfactorily. But he told me just now he's proud of this one. That was his first successful example. And he split the chair. And, Chopin, for a very long time, his inspiration was chairs. So that really, this chair, which you can sit on quite comfortably, and uh, demarcates art and design and yet unites it.
Yeah, I mean, my understanding is that Chopin is not so much interested in making chairs, as things to sit in, right? Like he's really approaching this um, as a fine artist, but I think even for designers who make this who make chairs, chairs are more than chairs, right? Like you started to talk, you touched upon the symbolic meaning of chairs in the traditional Chinese household, but maybe you can tell us a little bit more about more contemporary or the chair as a more contemporary vehicle for different kinds of meanings. Why do people collect chairs? I guess is another way of asking this.
Yes, why do people collect chairs? You know, in the traditional, go back to the Chinese way, people collected chair because it was symbolic, and most of all, according to the kind of wood it was constructed in, the desirability was in the material. But the contemporary chairs, I mean, mid-century even departed from that, and the contemporary chairs is really like a plaything. And for example, like the chair by Damien Hirst is really, he did nothing to it except put some paint on it, but the paint matters. So the chair can be, the basis of a pictorial depiction. Mm. So chairs is a vehicle that really, if you go back to Xiaofan's chair, is a start and a departure point, and that was 1997 of art and design.
Yeah, like it's always I've always wondered, if in China and East Asian cultures generally, I mean, I've always wondered why there aren't more collectors of contemporary chairs and design, because of course, in East Asian cultures, there was historically very little distinction between fine and applied arts, or fine and decorative arts, right? I mean, the arts were very much integrated with artistic practice, and functional objects were very much integrated. Whether you're talking about, vases or chairs or screens or whatnot, and so to me, it's a very natural it's a very natural jump to start seeing the artistic value in these otherwise functional objects.
Well, if you go to the new chairs, like, how do you pronounce his name? Jairus Laman? Well, it's another realm again. Maybe you know more than I do it. I just look at it visually, and is that the new trend to come? So you can still sit on his chair. When I last saw his exhibition, the Cooper Hewitt, and of course we couldn't sit on his chair. I long to see how comfortable. Maybe that's no longer a consideration.
Right. Right.
It's an object of. It's a composition, and it's a realization of an artistic idea, and so it's um, another development, or another of chairs as no longer object, as a vehicle of art and design combined, and other elements too.
Sure. Sure. Now, Kai-Yin, maybe just going back to your collection
Yes.
for a moment. So you went from classical Chinese furniture to mid 20th century Scandinavian, postmodern and contemporary, but then you went back to mid 20th century Japanese furniture, like
Yes.
modern Japanese furniture, and especially in plywood, which kind of brings the story full circle, because your first piece was the Alvar Aalto plywood, and then you were collecting
Yes.
plywood by Sakakura and Tange.
I collected those because of their provenance, and the Sakakura is, in fact, I looked at my notes again, and I sat on the same type of chairs in this inn in north of Tokyo, in Hakone, in Yomoto. This inn, I just asked my friend, where I stayed in 2007, no longer exists. But you imagine when I went into my tatami room and saw those chairs, and I said, wow, in situ, I could enjoy them, what they were made for. It was very special. And the Tange chairs were introduced to me. Well, it's a big name. I don't usually associate it with it. Maybe he designed other chairs, but he designed it for is it a Bise memorial? So he designed the architecture as well as the interiors. So they come from the original place. I don't have a lot of Japanese examples. I think those were the only two because of their historical relevance.
Okay. Now, you said earlier that you haven't lost the collecting bug, and if you were to acquire a next piece, it would be a mid-90s piece. You said. So
yes, well, actually, I'm not showing, but because I'm not selling some Kurumata things. I admire him very much because Kurumata is a Miyake, and that's an epoch of development against historical development. So I also have those, and I also have Issey Miyake's designs. And because I'm a historian, and these people who made history and who changed the course of design and history is also important, because they are not so like looking at the articles per se. You have to have a body of their work and to be able to understand their contribution and their place in social and economic and cultural development.
So you're still collecting?
Not so much now, not at such a pace, but I collect because of the background of a piece and the relevance to a certain idea and a certain development.
Great. Well, I have to say, I, for one, am looking forward to seeing how your collection continues to evolve and develop. And I think we are unfortunately out of time, Kai-Yin, but really thank you so much for sharing your stories about your really fantastic collection.
Well, thank you so much, because it was these pieces have been in storage for years. Then that's why I decided to part with them to share with others. So I keep very few pieces, and which I enjoy, because really collecting to whoever may be interested in my pieces is really the story, and is the marks and stage of interest and an epoch in your understanding of design of a country, of an area, of a time.
Okay, well, it's a real treat to be able to see the pieces and to speak with you about them. So thank you again.
But anyway, first of all, and I'm so pleased that I gather there's much interest in Asia. Japan was the first nation for collecting design, and now the interest is in Hong Kong. And I gather that Hong Kong, which include Chinese collectors, is the #1 group of collectors.
Great.
Thank you,
Great.
Aric.
Thank you, Kai-Yin, and I hope to see you soon.
See you soon.
Bye. Take care.